Welcome Mr. Nabil Mohamed, and we are thrilled to have you today as our guest speaker. But before we start, a quick word on adfartech. We are a tech IT platform with focus on IT solution, IT resources, recruitment, and tech audio podcasts. We have vendor alliance with 50 plus partners and access to resources based on 20,000 plus resources across all skills, which we can deliver both on site and offshore within 24 hours at ADFR Tech. We love to hear views of visionary tech leaders just like Mr. Navid. We are super impressed by your LinkedIn bio and experience, and our 10,000 plus tech followers are excited to learn more about your journey, your views on latest tech innovation, other individual insights, trend and experience. So let's dive into the world of tech with our esteemed guest, Mr. Nabil Mohammed. So hi Nabil, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the first question, that what your extensive experience in the technology and AI and your current role as a CTO for Said International. Share some insight into how technology has transformed the all sector in recent years.
Okay. Just to ask a follow-up here so that I'm answering your question specifically. Are you saying the sector is in classified or e-commerce or trade, or are you talking about tech as a whole?
Yeah, whole sector.
And the question is, what kind of skills or
Question is like how technology and AI like transform the all sector in recent year. Like if I talk about all
Okay.
sector, e-commerce, and there are like marketing sector, there are some other technology and AI.
Got it. Okay, so I think the way that it transforms the sector is that it makes every single thing that you do using a manual or people-intensive or very operational process much more automatable, right? Like I think it's a fallacy, and most people think that using AI or using advanced automation techniques replaces jobs or like makes things unnecessary. I think what it actually does is it changes jobs. So taking for sale as an example, like we basically have a simple model. It's a classifieds model where we put buyer in touch with seller, and we make money by charging a certain listing fee for someone wanting to sell something that they own. So if you take yourself through this process, I mean, they take a photo of whatever it is that they own, and they upload it, and they put in some details about it. And then we kind of monitor and moderate whatever they posted, and then we end up posting it on their behalf so that the whole country or the whole audience can see that thing. And then before long, they get a bunch of phone calls from interested people willing to buy that item. Now, along that value chain, there's just like a bunch of different steps that used to be done manually and now can be done using technology with the same number of people, by the way, supporting it and watching it. So we can now recognize very quickly the item that they've uploaded without requiring a customer to input a bunch of manual details. This is a Toyota car, it's a Camry, it's model 2017. Like AI can kind of immediately recognize these things. And then when we police these posts to make sure that they don't have any harmful information, again, we can use AI to that effect. And then when we put this post in a certain category or a certain page, AI can help us determine where to put it in the hierarchy of information that we have on our website or on our app. And then if the person pays a certain fee to make it visible or extra visible, we can kind of recommend or match to them the appropriate fee that they should pay depending on how quickly they want this item sold. So again, there's a lot of automation involved with that. And then finally, when they do sell it and they want to rate the ad or rate the whole experience, then again, technology can help you identify certain happy paths that trigger an ask for the customer to rate the app and to say, I had a good time, I had a bad time. or to even trigger a phone call coming from one of our customer service reps asking them if there's anything that can be improved. So that throughout this entire, I just gave you an example from our company, throughout this entire kind of step-by-step process of customer experience, there's a ton of steps that are very operational in nature that couldn't be automated before, and now they're automatable. And so I think technology mainly optimizes what you do in traits like mine instead of changes it. And it does a better job, it does it faster. It definitely has a lot of false positives and false negatives that you have to work to kind of weed out. No AI model is just applied, copy paste. Like you have to make sure you apply it in the right context. But once you do, it's beautiful because it's just like a calculator. Like people used to do calculations by hand in the past. I don't think calculators, the introduction of calculators has lost people any jobs, but I do think that it has made a lot of calculations faster. So it saved people's time.
So, can you share any recent technology adoption success within your organization?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've succeeded in doing is automatically match certain search queries to certain categories, right? And we've used a lot of kind of complex querying methods in Elasticsearch on AWS to achieve this. So while you can write, the word Land Cruiser, the fact that For Sale knows that you probably want to go to the Toyota page because that's part of it is now really cool. So yeah, we use technology to do that. And as we speak, we're using technology to automatically kind of create user profiles and then create recommendation algorithms that, and this is not new, by the way, but it's still very, very interesting because each company builds it according to its own unique criteria and its own understanding of its customers. So we're building certain recommendation triggers for people who viewed or interacted with certain posts. And what's interesting about this is that the technology told us not to just show people things that are within the category that they already accessed and that they already filtered and searched on. It actually also directed us to occasionally show them things that they've never seen before because they're in categories that are just completely different. And so once in a while, it kind of insists on directing customers to discover entirely new verticals and opportunities. And if they interact with them, then we increase the weight of these new types of listings. So that's all really cool stuff that we've just seen in an output of regression analyses and machine learning models that we've run that have shown us what customers do and what they don't do, and then what to recommend to them based on that.
Yeah. So, what role has data analytics played in your decision-making process related to technology changes?
I think that it's not one role. It's that if you're at a tech company that's data-driven to any extent, then data analytics is just part of your DNA. It's not even like, one department that has a few data analysts and maybe data engineers or business analysts, and they're the data guys and everyone else doesn't do data. Like, that's a very bad way to run a tech company. And yeah, there's like one department usually somewhere near the back end that's responsible for constructing and maintaining the database or the databases and the data warehouse and everything in between. But once that structure is there, then data analytics is just a part of your average week. You use it to segment customers, to understand where your revenue is coming from, to understand what your funnel looks like, where people drop out, what triggers people to become inactive, what triggers them to become active again. You use it to find out all sorts of really interesting, cool attributes about people. Like you can go as deep as finding out how many people have dark mode enabled on their phones. What time of day they like to purchase versus what time of day they like to browse. You can kind of estimate, like you can't directly know this, but you can use models to estimate whether or not you think they have other competitors' apps on their phone. You can estimate whether they have several profiles or one profile. And that directs you to create better promos, better campaigns, better propositions, better offers for them. And then from time to time, it also shines light on essential initiatives or products or features that you have to create that you enter into the backlog because you just found out, for example, that the people who go into Toyota, all of the people who drop out from the Toyota page, whatever, 60% of them dropped out after clicking on a certain button or trying to do a certain operation. And while there's no bug in that button or operation, apparently there's just something wrong with the experience. And so it invites you to double click on that. So if you built your charts correctly, if you built your visualization and funnels and all of that stuff correctly, and you even took it to the extent where you actually get customized alerts when something above or below certain thresholds that you have happens, then it's just a beautiful thing. So everyone at For Sale and everyone in a proper tech company is just like has a basic level of literacy with data. There's no such thing as like, I don't know how to use Excel, or I don't know how to run a query, or I don't know how to update a dashboard or apply some filters that I need. So to me, it's not really a role. It's more of like a way of doing things. If the company says it's data driven, then this is the way that it puts its money where its mouth is. It's like, if you say you're data driven, then every single person in the company has access to data, and they have kind of this basic level of awareness of how to manipulate data to get the insights that they want.
Yeah. So, what qualities do you believe are essential for a successful CTO in today's tech landscape?
A successful CTO?
Yeah, successful CTO in today's tech landscape.
So I'll answer your question by first kind of splitting between two types of CTOs, right? There's a CTO of a very small company or a startup, where they're basically the senior engineer in between maybe 5 or 6 engineers that are just trying to kind of prop a product on its feet and create a minimum viable thing to see whether or not it makes money. And then there's kind of the more administrative managerial CTO who already oversees an engineering workforce of 20 people or above. And that's, in my experience, that's a different persona. For the former persona, the CTO, first and foremost, has to be a very gifted and very capable senior engineer, right? Like they have to command the technical respect of their team members. And if they don't occasionally write the sort of code or kind of think about the sort of architecture that makes the other engineers go like, wow, like this guy's, he's awesome. Like he really knows how to think like an engineer and how to solve difficult problems, then they're not worth their salt. Now, this doesn't apply or carry over once you talk about the administrative or managerial CTO. So I have a product background. As a technical person, I've engineered stuff before, but definitely not at an industrial level. I've coded before, but again, like not at a level where like I'm constantly testing my code and, checking the health of my environments, all of that stuff. But I would say that matters less in my day-to-day job, because what matters much more is for me to understand the different systems that govern my architecture and what dictates our architectural health and what we need to be doing as gigantic projects that really move us forward and make us more scalable, and how responsive or sensitive do we need to be to small like day-to-day issues. And then apart from that, like there's there's managing, recruiting, evaluating, like making sure you breed an engineer organization that values excellence. And so you give a lot of power to people under you who are very, very gifted and experts at managing their function. So my head of iOS, my head of Android, my head of DevOps, my head of web, my head of QC are not people who I am worried about micromanaging. right? Because if I were, then this whole model wouldn't work. There are people who are experts in their field to an extent that allows the buck to stop when it comes to technical questions or technical disagreements with them. It doesn't have to stop with me. And that frees me up to talk about about general engineering health, how to measure our app launch time, how to measure our bugs, how to measure our crashes, how to create a better containerization model within our DevOps, how to redesign our database. And at that point, what you need, or what a good CTO needs, I think more so than being able to code beautifully or code scalably, it kind of swings more towards having a proper engineering mindset, right? So having an ability to understand where dependencies might occur. Are we designing ourselves into a corner? Are we creating bottlenecks for the future? Or are we creating things that are very independent, that will run in a very helpful, scalable way in the future? So I preside over a lot of these discussions, and I kind of, I have a lot of penetrating questions when it comes to, like, is the system healthy? How do we know if it's not working well? How do we have safeguards as part of this system and as part of other systems that integrate with it? Does the code, is it able to communicate with legacy APIs? Will we need to update its language or its stack in the future? So all of this is stuff, like administrative stuff, that a modern day kind of CTO of a medium to large organization worries about. And I think that's the stuff, more than anything, that makes them great.
Yeah, yeah, I think you are right. Like a successful CTO must have understanding of technology trend, innovation, like effective communication also, and strategic acumen and risk management. So you are right. They should
Exactly.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's much more of like a business person who understands technical dependencies.
Yeah.
They may have come from engineering, they may have come from marketing, they may have come from product. Like, there's no one formula, but at the end of the day, it's someone who's swimming towards business success, and utilizing their knowledge of their staff and their knowledge of their systems to do so, and getting rid of things that can kill us. Because in engineering, if you have the wrong stack, if you have the wrong setup, really dangerous, harmful stuff can happen very, very quickly. And you can lose money in a day just because your services are not working correctly or whatever it is. So you have to be very sensitive to that area.
Yeah, even Nabil, you might be having a lot of responsibility to give such type innovate to creative, to share their ideas, creativity, and even making sure that the end customer doesn't suffer. So that's
Exactly.
yeah, creating that environment is absolutely important.
Like, we don't wait on urgent tickets. We solve them immediately, right? Because we know that somewhere someone is like shouting at customer service, and we can't have that.
Absolutely.
At the same time, we have a completely different process, so that an intake process, so that a team that believes, that's already discussed with their manager, and believes that we need to, whatever it is, migrate a service or adopt a new technology or do any one of like the multiple things, or work across functions to achieve a certain, stack or architecture that we haven't achieved before. We have intake processes for these things to happen, and we demand that, like, they write a document, they clarify exactly where the value is here. We say, like, don't worry about the revenue, don't worry about the profit. Just tell me what's the customer benefit here, what's going to be faster, what's going to be better, what's going to have less bugs and crashes, what's going to save on developer time or product manager time or tester time or deployment time. And once we get there where we can kind of gauge the ROI of something, we're like, all right, it's going in the next sprint. We have it sized, we have it planned, we have it resourced. And then it's just a question of like when it will come out. But you have to have these two very separate processes. You have to allow them to innovate, but at the same time, keep them tied and like keep both feet on the ground to the person who's paying our salary every day, who's the customer.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, how do you manage risk when investing in cutting edge technologies or experimental projects?
I don't think I understand the question.
Yeah. So, my question is that how do you manage risk when investing in cutting edge technologies or experimental projects?
I see. How do I manage risk when it comes to cutting old technologies or experimental projects,
Yeah.
right? So I don't manage it reactive. That's for starters. Like if I'm now being kind of faced with some sort of decision, like, oh, do we turn this old thing off or do we turn this experiment off? We have other more important things to manage, and the risk of keeping the lights on there is too high. Then we've already failed, because if this decision or if this kind of meeting or whatever discussion is coming as a surprise, then we've already allowed our resources to run away from us to the extent that we don't even know what they're doing. We're not even tracking them. And the fact that they're not producing ROI or producing some sort of great result is news to us. Like, I don't mind that we have an experiment and that it fails. I do mind that, oh my God, Nabil, what are we going to do? Like this, like we have 5 engineers working on this thing that hasn't produced any output. And so now we have to take a difficult decision. So I think that the much better way to manage all of this is when you set a process and a system, especially when it's an intake or some sort of backlog process, and throughout your planning and sizing, like this is the whole stages that are before the actual coding and development. During these stages, you have to proactively set standards and decide with people what is the overwhelming majority of our capacity that's going to go towards known ROI things that are like relatively risk-free, that we know that we need to do for the customers, versus other things that are more kind of like shots in the dark that we think might be useful or succeed. And so we time box these, we resource box these, we make sure that it doesn't run away from us. We come back the next month and we monitor where they've went. And by then, the team that's been working on these things has a much clearer idea on whether or not they think they want to continue, or they want to pivot, or they want to actually stop. And they're genuinely convinced that it's no longer practical to keep kind of digging themselves within that hole. But they still appreciate the kind of the wide berth that you gave them to go and explore and innovate, because sometimes these things produce really good things. So this is my answer to experimentation. As for old technologies, it's I would say it's just like a different set of criteria. So we don't kind of just upgrade old technology for the sake of, just keeping up with the times and being cool. Either there's business value coming from that, or there's not. Like Excel, Microsoft Excel is really old technology. Yeah. SQL is really old technology. Like we're not going to move off of Excel to a different spreadsheet tool, or we're not going to move to a different querying language just because it's the cool thing to do. So old is almost irrelevant. What's actually more relevant is this this having an actually just what do you call it? A negative effect or a downside on how our code talks to each other, how our systems communicate. Are some API calls coming in late? Do we have a problem with bugs or UI hangs or crashes? Do we have a problem with caching, with slugs? Are we now starting to get outdated with the OS version or the device version or whatever it is? Like, are we now at a point where this is becoming a bottleneck? And you usually find out these things in a reactive fashion. Like, first someone flags it to you. They're like, we're probably going to need to update this because I'm seeing that it's already, working around it has started becoming a headache. And then you wait a few more months and it becomes like, guys, we have to upgrade from, I don't know, PHP version 4. And so when it, like, after a while, when you're an experienced manager, you feel that inflection point coming where you're like, okay, we probably have to do something about this now. And it's fine for you to be reactive, because the effort for you to migrate or upgrade is actually pretty known. You just need to decide to do it and consciously prioritize it so that you deprioritize other things in your roadmap. And so we've had that kind of like moment of truth several times where we're like, all right, we got to stop a lot of things and just refactor here, guys. This is no longer tenable, and we've done it. So the strategies for old code or old tools is very different from the strategy for experiments. In one case, you actually plan ahead. In another case, you just need to apply good judgment for when to react so that it's not too early and it's not too late.
Yeah. So can you share some examples of successful digital transformation projects and their impact on your business?
Successful business transformation?
Yeah.
What do you mean by business transformation?
So my question is that can you share some example of successful digital transformation projects and their impact?
Digital.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually close to the examples that I mentioned in the beginning when you were asking about automation and AI. Like digital transformation at its core, it doesn't have to be like some huge enterprise thing. Digital transformation essentially means that you took something that was manual and not very easily scalable in nature and depended to a great extent on people and was highly prone to human error. And you were able to somehow put that in a system governed by code or by just technical guidelines. And you were able to then kind of give yourself some sort of administrative access to configure the system the way you like so that it runs faster or slower or does things depending on a different criteria. Like that's basically what digital transformation means. It's just a fancy word for automation. So all of these things that I mentioned, like how we moderate draft posts, how we suggest to people different things, how we call them or we ask for their feedback, how we recognize the item that they're trying to upload, how we identify certain customers as candidates for great promotions and offers and campaigns. Like all of this stuff used to be done in very manual methods. And now like there's all sorts of systems that just like spit out this information for us so that we can then just like immediately act on it.
Yeah. So how do you inspire and lead your technology team?
I manage a lot of people at the same time, but I still take care to do weekly one-on-ones with them to make sure I know what's going on in their areas. They also have to write like a pretty detailed update about what's going on in their areas and what help they need. Also, we meet together for 2 hours every week and we go through everything. We have vigorous debates. And so this gives me and them a sense that like we're close to what's happening. Like they may not understand everything on the side, product, finance, strategy, and I may not understand everything on the side of their technical stacks, but it doesn't like it's almost compensated for by the fact that we use these regular ongoing mechanisms to make sure that we're rowing in the same direction and to break any ties when it comes to difficult decisions. And on top of all of that, we have weekly company town halls. We have all sorts of events and stuff. We do kind of like tiny little things like squad outings and stuff like that to make sure people just have an outlet to just be able to let off some steam because our sprints are very stressful. And we have these fixed deployment deadlines and stuff. And we try to consider like tiny little things, buying souvenirs during specific periods of the year, showing understanding when someone has an event or a family issue. And then the other part of it is just like requiring people to come to the office for a minimum number of days per week. Like when we did this, it sounded at first like very autocratic because a lot of them were just very used to working remotely completely. But then they saw the value in it. And they saw that we weren't trying to just like get them to the office just to as a power move. We wanted them to be together, not to be with us. And that worked to a very great extent. And then a third thing I would say is you need to give them a very solid process to work through. You can't just be like, oh, you should have a backlog, you should have an intake. Like you need to design those systems of planning and the deployment and deadlines, and you need to calendarize them well enough so that they feel like they're running as fast as they could within an already pre-designed track. But the idea that like every single one of them should just like figure out the process or lack thereof and try to work within it, it creates a lot of demotivation because it risks people's credibility, because people who poured a lot of effort into doing one thing and then were asked the next day to completely pivot and redirect to something else, by, with time, they become more cynical and more distrusting of the system, and they eventually develop a state of overall idleness. And you don't want that. You want them to feel like, almost none of their effort will be wasted, and that you're conserving their time very well. And then finally, like, I make it a point to be at the office every day. Like it's an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half commute every day from my house to the office. But I think it's worth it because you try to lead by example. I also buy them books. Like we have these book sessions a ton of time. We have knowledge shares almost every week during the town hall. During periods of the year where we don't have a lot of deliverables, I'm very open to giving their teams a part of the sprint, maybe let's say 10 15%, for them to work on experiments or things that they think are cool but are not sure of their ROI, like there's a lot of risk tied to them. And then, and we share the company results and the success, because at the end of the day, when they feel like they're part of an entity that's going somewhere, that's a rocket ship, they become super motivated. And so For Sale is growing really, really fast. And we try not to make that a secret. Like we don't inflate the truth. We're not overly ostentatious about it. But when we talk, we're just like, here are the numbers, guys. Like, this is what's happening well. This is what's happening not so well. You guys are doing a great job. Yeah. We still need to do X, Y, and Z. We're still getting started. So let's go.
Yeah, you are right. Like recognizing achievement and promoting a collaborative, inclusive environment. It should be there in any organizations. Like that empowers each team members to contribute their best.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Nabil, for your insight. It was great talking to you. And thank you to our audience. Thank you for tuning in the adfartech podcast. We appreciate your support, and thank you so much, Mr. Nabil, for your time.
No problem. Great talking to you guys.